Don't drink that. The warning came too late. By the time anyone turned, the glass was already empty. No one screamed. No one moved. Nothing felt wrong. Not yet. Across the room, a doctor stood watching. Calm. Silent. Patient. Because what no one realized in that moment was that death had already begun, not with a weapon, not with force, but with something far more dangerous: trust. And the most disturbing part? This wasn't the first time. And it wouldn't be the last. Welcome back to the Story Vault, where we uncover the darkest true crime stories history tried to forget. If you enjoy stories like this, you're in the right place. While you're here, let me know where you're watching from. I always like to see how far these stories reach. Now, this story doesn't begin with a murder. It begins with a family who had no idea they were already being watched. In early October of 1909, in the quiet town of Independence, Missouri, the Swope family lived in a large red brick mansion on Pleasant Street. It was the kind of home that commanded respect without asking for it: old, elegant, and filled with history. At the center of it all was Colonel Thomas Hunt Tunn Swope, an 81-year-old landowner whose name carried weight across Kansas City. He was wealthy, respected, and known for his generosity, the kind of man who had donated land for public parks and still chose to live simply, riding the streetcar like anyone else. He never married. He had no children. Instead, his legacy rested with his extended family, who lived under the same roof. His widowed sister-in-law, Margaret Swope, and her children filled the mansion with life. Laughter echoed through the halls. Conversations carried late into the evening. On the surface, it was a home built on trust and familiarity. But beneath that surface, something had already begun to shift. Because trust, once placed in the wrong hands, doesn't break loudly. It breaks quietly. And often, far too late. The family physician, Dr. Bennett Clark Hyde, was not just a doctor. He was family. Married to Frances Swope, the colonel's eldest niece, Hyde moved through the mansion with ease. No doors were closed to him. No questions were asked. He was trusted completely. And that trust gave him access to everything. The colonel had been in relatively good health for his age. Strong, alert, and independent. But in the days leading up to his death, something changed. Subtle at first. A slight discomfort. A minor complaint. Nothing that would raise alarm, at least not immediately. Hyde was there. Observing. Advising. Administering. Always calm. Always composed. To anyone watching, he was simply doing his job. But there were moments, small and almost invisible, that didn't sit right, moments that would only make sense later. The colonel began receiving injections, treatments that Hyde insisted were necessary. Stimulants, he said, something to strengthen the body. No one questioned it. Why would they? He was the doctor. And doctors were meant to heal, not harm. But what if that assumption was wrong? What if the very person entrusted with saving lives had already decided who would die? The shift from normalcy to fear didn't happen all at once. It came in waves. Quiet. Gradual. Almost unnoticeable. Until it wasn't. On October 3, 1909, Colonel Thomas Hunt Tunn Swope was dead. The official cause was listed as cerebral hemorrhage, a natural death, expected even given his age. And for a brief moment, the family accepted it. They mourned. They grieved. They tried to move forward. But something about it didn't sit right, not with everyone. Because death, when it comes naturally, has a certain rhythm to it, a certain pattern. And this didn't feel like that. Just 2 days before the colonel's death, another member of the extended family had collapsed suddenly. James Moss Hunt Tunn, a cousin, had died under strange circumstances. And soon after, others fell ill, showing symptoms that resembled typhoid fever, yet with odd inconsistencies that no ordinary illness could explain. Observant nurses began noticing patterns. Strange treatments, odd restrictions, precautions that seemed unnecessary. Hyde insisted on bottled water for himself and his family while others drank freely from the tap. They recorded every unusual symptom, every injection, every deviation from the expected care. These notes, meticulous and detailed, would later become the backbone of a case that shocked Kansas City and reverberated across the nation. Suspicion was not immediate, but it grew like a slow-burning fire, fueled by illness, death, and the unsettling behavior of the man entrusted with life and health. Each visit by Hyde coincided with a new ailment, each treatment delivered with calm precision, each family member left wondering how fate had become so cruel. And yet, even as doubt crept in, fear held them silent. For Hyde was not only doctor and family, but a man whose confidence could make anyone question their own instincts. The Swope Mansion, once a haven of warmth and trust, had become a place of quiet dread, where every whisper and every cough carried the weight of suspicion. By December of 1909, the illness had spread. William Chrisman Swope, another relative, grew weak and pale. Typhoid-like symptoms hit the household in waves. Fever, nausea, trembling. The doctors sent in were baffled. But the nurses were not. They had begun to see a pattern. Every time Dr. Hyde administered treatments, someone would fall sick. They whispered among themselves, careful not to be overheard. They documented every detail. They remembered the odd precautions, the insistence on bottled water, the careful monitoring of doses that seemed too precise to be for medicine alone. Something was deeply wrong. The whispers eventually reached Margaret Swope. She had been a strong matriarch, decisive, protective of her children. But even she struggled to grasp the horror taking place under her roof. Confronted by the nurses, she hesitated. Fear, disbelief, and the weight of family loyalty held her back. She wanted to trust, to believe that Hyde was simply performing his duties. Yet doubt gnawed at the edges of her mind, small at first, then insistent. By early January of 1910, suspicion became unavoidable. The family demanded answers. Hyde was removed from the house. Investigators moved in. And then came the decision that would change everything. Colonel Swope's body was exhumed. Professor Ludwig Hechtoen, a pathologist of national renown, led the examination. Forensic science, still in its infancy, revealed what no one wanted to believe: lethal levels of strychnine and cyanide coursed through the colonel's veins. The natural cause listed on the death certificate was a lie. It was poison. And it had been administered deliberately. William Chrisman Swope's body, already buried, revealed the same evidence. 2 deaths, both sudden, both attributed to natural causes, both in the hands of a trusted doctor. It was enough to send shockwaves through the city. A grand jury convened on February 15, 1910. Witnesses testified. Nurses described the injections, the precautions, the smells, the discarded capsules they had found. The prosecution painted Hyde as a calculating, methodical killer, someone who had exploited his position of trust for gain, for power, for inheritance. The defense fought fiercely, questioning the validity of toxicology, suggesting natural causes, attributing strange chemical traces to medicinal purposes, claiming that cyanide was purchased for pest control, not murder. The courtroom was tense. Every statement, every exhibit, every testimony added weight to the unspoken question: could someone so trusted commit crime so unimaginable? On March 5, indictments were issued. Hyde faced multiple charges: murder, attempted murder, and the attempted poisoning of family members. By April 16, the first trial began. Kansas City watched closely. The press covered every detail. People whispered in the streets, debated in parlors. The trial was a spectacle, a combination of legal drama, medical intrigue, and human emotion. Witness after witness detailed the events in Hyde's care. The prosecution's strategy was relentless. The defense countered, yet every new piece of evidence seemed to reinforce the narrative of betrayal, greed, and death. On May 16, 1910, the verdict came. Guilty. Dr. Bennett Clark Hyde was sentenced to life imprisonment. Relief and vindication rippled through the family, tempered by disbelief that someone so trusted could be capable of such calculated cruelty. But the legal battle was far from over. Hyde's appeals were swift. The Missouri Supreme Court overturned the verdict on April 11, 1911, ordering a new trial. The second trial commenced in October of the same year. Jurors were selected, the city waited with bated breath, and then chaos struck. A juror disappeared. The trial ended in a mistrial. A third trial in January 1913 faced a deadlock. Another mistrial. Legal procedural safeguards at the time limited further prosecution, and by January 1917, the fourth trial was dismissed. Hyde, despite repeated accusations and mounting evidence, walked free. Public opinion was divided. Some saw a man who had manipulated the justice system. Others saw a failure of law and procedure that allowed a murderer to escape justice. Hyde returned to work sporadically in medicine, but his reputation was ruined. His wife, Frances Swope Hyde, divorced him in 1920, citing abusive behavior. By the time Hyde died in Lexington, Missouri, on August 7, 1934, he had never confessed. His grave marker was removed from the family plot, leaving only the unanswered questions and a legacy of suspicion. Colonel Swope, finally laid to rest on April 8, 1918, in the park he had donated, left behind a cautionary tale. Wealth, family, and trust can be weaponized. Poison may not always announce itself. And sometimes, justice takes decades, only to leave society pondering what could have been. The Swope case remains an enduring example of early 20th century forensic science, of the limitations of the legal system, and of the subtle, chilling ways in which betrayal can manifest within a family. Nurses' observations, meticulous documentation, and the courage to question authority prevented the story from being buried along with its victims. It reminds us that even in times when science was less advanced and courts were prone to procedural limits, vigilance, and human intuition could still expose unimaginable truths. The Swope mansion, once a symbol of family pride, became a silent witness to murder, deception, and a dramatic legal saga that captivated a city and resonated far beyond. The story doesn't end with Hyde walking free. The mansion still held secrets, whispers that clung to the walls like shadows. Every room, every corridor, every corner of the house carried the memory of fear and suspicion. Even after the trials, the family could never truly breathe again under that roof. The doctors who examined the evidence were meticulous, and yet legal loopholes and procedural rules left the ultimate question unanswered: did Hyde get away with murder? Observers noted patterns in his behavior that were chilling. He was always calm, always precise, always in control. Those who worked closely with him recalled his meticulous attention to detail, his insistence on exact procedures, his uncanny ability to appear helpful while hiding sinister motives. The poison, administered through injections or carefully measured doses, had left a trail that only the keenest eyes could follow. Nurses like Pearl Keller had noticed the odors, the small signs, the subtle hints that something was horribly wrong. They documented everything, knowing the weight of their observations could one day uncover the truth. And uncover it they did. Hectoin's toxicology results were indisputable. Strychnine and cyanide were present in the colonel's system in fatal amounts. Every detail pointed to Hyde, yet the law failed to deliver a final conviction. The public followed the trials with a mix of fascination and horror. Newspapers printed every testimony, every piece of forensic evidence, and the courtroom became a stage where morality, justice, and family loyalty collided. The trials revealed more than just the specifics of murder. They highlighted the fragility of trust, the vulnerability of families, and the shocking potential for betrayal by someone in a position of power. Hyde's motives were debated endlessly. Some believed greed, some believed revenge, others whispered of a calculated desire to control the inheritance that had been promised but was under revision. Each theory seemed plausible, each more chilling than the last. Frances Swope, his wife, remained by his side during some of the proceedings, but even her loyalty could not shield the public from seeing Hyde's meticulous manipulation. After the final dismissal of the fourth trial, the family tried to rebuild, but scars lingered. The mansion, once vibrant, became quieter. Conversations were hushed. Laughter was cautious. And every visitor knew, instinctively, that beneath the elegance lay a history of betrayal and death. Hyde attempted to live a normal life, but the shadow of suspicion followed him. He worked sporadically in medicine, sometimes in manual labor, but he could never escape the notoriety attached to his name. Kansas City remembered. The story circulated in whispers, in articles, in history books, and in the minds of those who marveled at the audacity and cunning of a man who, for a time, was trusted with life and death. By the time of his death in 1934, Hyde had never confessed. He left a legacy of unanswered questions and unresolved tension. The removal of his grave marker symbolized the discomfort society felt toward a man who had eluded final judgment. Meanwhile, the Swope family had to reconcile the loss of loved ones, the betrayal by someone they considered family, and the failure of justice to fully account for his actions. Colonel Swope's interment in the park he had donated brought some closure to his memory, but not to the questions his death raised. The story of the Swope family, their trusted doctor, and the trail of poison remains one of the most compelling examples of early forensic science in America. It is a reminder of the subtle ways danger can infiltrate even the safest places, the importance of observation, and the sometimes frustrating limitations of legal systems. Even today, the case is studied, discussed, and recounted as a chilling illustration of trust betrayed, the deadly misuse of professional authority, and the intricate dance between evidence, suspicion, and law. The mansion itself, a silent witness, continues to inspire awe and fear. The lives that intersected there, the deaths that occurred, and the trials that ensued are forever etched into the history of Kansas City. People reading the story feel a shiver at the thought that ordinary routines, meals, medicines, visits, could hide such darkness. Nurses' courage, forensic ingenuity, and public attention brought the case to light, but the ultimate resolution, Hyde's guilt or innocence, remained suspended in time. Every detail, from the meticulous documentation of symptoms to the calculated precision of the poisonings, serves as a lesson in vigilance. The Swope story reminds us that sometimes the most trusted individuals may harbor intentions far darker than anyone could imagine, and that the pursuit of justice is not always straightforward. It is a story of wealth, inheritance, and the deadly consequences of misplaced trust, a story that captivates and terrifies in equal measure, a story that continues to haunt the corridors of history and the imagination of those who encounter it. Even after Hyde's departure from the Swope mansion, the echoes of fear and suspicion lingered. Family members moved through the rooms with caution, their conversations hushed, their laughter tentative. Every visit from friends or neighbors carried a subtle tension. The Swope family, meanwhile, struggled to reclaim a sense of normalcy. The mansion, once a symbol of familial pride, remained haunted by the echoes of fear, grief, and betrayal. Colonel Swope was finally laid to rest in the park he had donated, a gesture of closure for the one life they could honor without question. Over time, the story of the Swope murders became a lesson in vigilance, trust, and the limitations of the legal system. Nurses' courage, meticulous documentation, and early forensic science ensured that the truth was preserved for history. Scholars, criminologists, and the public continue to study the case as an enduring example of how ordinary lives can be infiltrated by extraordinary malice, and how justice can sometimes fail despite overwhelming evidence. Even today, the Swope mansion stands as a silent witness, a reminder that trust, wealth, and family, when weaponized, can have consequences that echo across decades. The case serves not only as a cautionary tale of human vulnerability but also as a testament to the power of observation, courage, and the relentless pursuit of truth. The story ends there, leaving behind a chilling legacy, betrayal hidden behind familiarity, poison disguised as care, and the unresolved tension between law, justice, and human nature. Thank you for staying with us through this story. If you found the Swope family saga, the mysterious deaths, and the investigation into Dr. Hyde compelling, make sure to subscribe to the Story Vault, leave a comment telling us what you think about the case, and like the video. Your support helps us continue bringing forgotten stories, historical crimes, and chilling mysteries to light. Stories like the Swope case remind us why history matters, not just for what happened, but for the lessons it leaves behind. Trust, vigilance, and courage can save lives, or at least reveal the truth. And here, at the Story Vault, we honor the lives, the mysteries, and the truths that time cannot erase. Stay curious, stay vigilant, and never forget the stories that shape our past and inform our present.